welcome to Anxiety and Mental Health, an interactive presentation on learning to manage your stress and anxiety. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. And before we start, I ask that if you haven't signed in yet, please go on back and do so. Also, if you haven't grabbed any refreshments, they're in the back, so please feel free to get up at any point during the presentation and just grab a snack. Also, if at any point you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to raise your hand, and Dr. Springer and I will do our best to answer your questions. And also, one more thing, please mute all of your cell phones at this time so as to minimize distractions during the presentation. Just a little disclaimer before we officially get started. This presentation is for informational purposes and is not meant to diagnose or provide professional advice or mental health treatment. This presentation will cover some mental health topics that some people might find sensitive or result in emotional discomfort. So by agreeing to these terms, I will not hold the facility or the presenters responsible for any difficulties caused by the content of this presentation. So just a general agenda of what we're going to cover during this presentation. So to examine situations that contribute to stress and anxiety, to identify symptoms of it, to learn self-help strategies, to help manage it, and to kind of build off of self-help strategies, to learn when and how to seek professional help. So first, a little bit about me. My name is Rihi Jain. I am a junior in high school right now, and I'm an ambassador from Girl Scout Troop 80222, based in Colonia, New Jersey. Shout out to my troop leader, Denise, and Molly back there. And I've been a Girl Scout for about 7 years now, and this presentation is part of my Girl Scout Go to War project, which is the highest award that a Girl Scout can earn. It is kind of, thank you. It is the culmination of my Girl Scout journey, and I chose this particular topic to do a presentation on because mental health, stress, anxiety, these are all epidemics that are kind of plaguing our modern society today, and despite its widespread impacts, enough people aren't talking about it. So in doing this presentation, I hope that we can spread awareness about this. So building off of kind of why I chose to do this presentation, I do have a personal experience that I do want to share with you all. So I knew a teenage girl who I will call Mary for the reasons of privacy, and who, as the burden of stress, college, SATs, the works, got to her, her mental health started to decline tremendously. And Mary would always tell me about her immense amount of anxiety, her stress, and how she couldn't focus on anything because she was so worried about the effects of her grades, as well as not being able to live up to the expectations that her family had for her. And soon her straight A's became B's and C's, and she would become isolated from her friends. Eventually, when people would ask her if she's okay, she would just come to ignore them. And then, as things got worse, one day she just stopped coming to school. And later I came to know that she started using drugs in order to cope with her declining mental health. And following this, she was forced to go to a rehabilitation program and is on her way to recovery. So I think that the most important thing from this that we can learn is that stress, anxiety, and any other mental illness for that matter can affect even the best of us. Nobody is quote-unquote immune to mental illness, and even though we can't see it, its effects can be physical and they can be devastating as well. So if Mary had known that there was help out there for her, and that she wasn't in this alone, perhaps the situation wouldn't have gotten as bad as it did. And so with this presentation, I do hope to address all of that and spreading awareness. So just something from all of you to get you guys engaged. I have a couple of questions for all of you. So first, how many of you suffer from stress or anxiety, or you know someone else who does? By show of hands. Yes. And okay, so building off of that, what kinds of things stress you or others out? So just raise your hand if you feel comfortable sharing. Molly? Yes, definitely. As a junior, I can definitely relate to that. Anyone else?
Work.
Yeah,
Work.
definitely. And in the back?
I have panic attacks.
I know that, especially with the stresses that come in our society today, that is definitely, yeah, yes,
Paying bills.
definitely. Financial.
Repeat
Okay.
what they say.
Paying bills.
So he said paying bills does cause him stress, so that is definitely a factor. Anyone else?
Instability?
I'm sorry.
Instability,
Like financial stability?
like financial work, all that, you know.
Oh, like overall stability in life. Yeah, that is definitely a major stressor. Okay, yes.
And I'm working with some people who are being released from their full-time employment because they're close to the age of 60. And nobody, no big firm these days wants to handle retirement issues.
So retirement, kind of the troubles that come with that in relation to employment, that is definitely something that stresses out older people, or older adults for that matter. Anyone else? Anyone? Yes.
Aging parents and their health issues.
Definitely. So health problems do become an imminent factor of stress as one ages. Yes. Okay. Next question. What kinds of things do you or others that you know do to cope with stress? Again, anyone who would like to share? Yes.
Meditation.
Meditation is definitely a very effective way to deal with your stress. Yes, Molly?
Research,
Like
researching things that they want to work on, or things that will help with the issues that they're trying to deal with, or things that they're anxious about.
Yeah, so problem solving strategies, right? So that is definitely an effective way. Anyone else? Yes.
Listen to music.
Yes, listening to music, that is a very good way to cope with your stress. Yes?
Outdoor physical activity.
Yes, getting your body moving. Yes. Anyone else? All right.
Talking.
Talking about your problems, whether it be with your friends, family, etc. That is definitely a good way. So building off of all of that, yes, there are many different ways to cope with your stress, but there is a line between healthy coping and unhealthy coping. So first, exercise, as we mentioned before, getting your body moving, even doing a sport that you like, dancing, Zumba, yoga, anything of that sort is a good way to kind of let off the steam. And second one, talking about the problem with someone that you trust. So whether this be a counselor, a parent, a guardian, family members, friends, anyone of that sort, and professional help is also an option, which we will get into later during the presentation. Next thing, healthy eating. So that is also a very good way to help deal with your stress. So I don't know about all of you, but most people, when they get stressed, they do tend to binge eat. So I know it seems good, it feels good in the moment, but in the end, it does often cause more problems than it's meant to solve. So relaxation techniques, so we mentioned before, yoga, meditation, those are all really good ways to help cope with your stress, and we will get more into that later on. And then developing problem-solving strategies, kind of addressing the problem, the stressor at the root is a very good way to kind of eliminate that stress and cope with it. So next thing, unhealthy coping. Number one, procrastination. I know we are all guilty of it, but it often does create more problems than it solves in the end, because when it's a couple of hours before the deadline, you all know how that feels. Overeating, as we mentioned before, binge eating, no, not good. Sleeping too little or too much. So I actually have a personal story with this. So I had a friend who she stayed up all night the day before her SATs studying for it, and she fell asleep really, really late into the night, and the next day, guess what? She ended up missing her SATs. So all that studying for nothing. So that can also be a problem as well. Bottling up your emotions. So a lot of the time when we feel stressed, we do tend to suppress our emotions. We tend to just keep it in because we're afraid of what others would think of us. So often talking about the problem and letting it go in a healthy means is a good way to kind of cope with your stress. Social withdrawal, again, talking to people, biting your nails and habits, other gross habits, it's definitely not a good way to deal with your stress. And last, drugs, alcohol, smoking, vaping, juuling, anything of that sort is not good for you.
What does juuling mean?
So it's,
another form of vaping.
Thank you.
yes. Yeah, it's another form of vaping. It's like electronic cigarettes. Yeah. So now we'd like to do a little communication activity with all of you, just so we can get to know each other a little bit and get the ball rolling. So Dr. Springer is handing out a set of cards. You guys will be in groups of 2 or 3, depending on how you all are seated. So essentially, the way this works is that on the cards there are 2 questions. There's one 1-point question and there's one 2-point question. So you're going to do like a question and answer thing with your partners. So your partner's going to ask you a question or both questions, and whichever question that you choose to answer is the amount of points that your team gets. So suppose you choose to answer the 1-point question, your team gets 1 point, or if you answer both questions, your team gets 3 points. So ideally, the object of the game is to kind of get to know each other and to get the highest amount of points possible. So by the way, you'll have 10 minutes to kind of go through the stack.
So how many? Everyone answers one set?
Yeah, so you guys are going to be switching roles throughout. So one card, one person answers, and then the next card, another person answers. So the role of questioner and interviewee, the roles are interchangeable.
So there's a 1 point or
So you could choose 1 point, 2 point, or both for 3 points. So you can answer both questions for 3 points, and then record the number of points you get, and then move the deck of cards to someone else, and they can read the next card to you. Okay?
Any questions?
writing down answers?
And there's prizes associated with this. There's raffle tickets that are being given out. So try to get as many points as you can.
And also, you don't need to write down the answers to the questions. They're meant to be discussion-based, but do keep track of the points that you have. At this point, if you're not through the whole deck, it's okay. But raise your hand if you think your team has the most amount of points. How many points do you have?
14.
14? Is there any? Yeah, in total.
Oh, so it's 28.
Oh, 28.
Okay.
28.
All right, 28. Does any one team have higher than 28 points? No? Going once? Going twice? Yes, how many points? 22? 33. Wow. Has anyone beat 33? No. No? All right, congratulations. You guys get a raffle ticket. All right, everyone, what did you think of the game? What did you like? What did you dislike? Talk to me. Yes.
Well, I'm sitting next to a lovely person, and it was such a pleasure to meet her and find out this amount of information in 10 minutes, right? Sometimes it takes 6 months before you find out these things.
That is awesome. That is exactly what the purpose of this activity was, in fact. Anyone else that wishes to share? All right. Anyone? Yes?
Yeah, I think our fear here, for most of us, was talking to strangers, but we were here talking to each other, so that was funny.
Well, that's good because this activity was meant to help us get to know each other. I know most of us are strangers here in this room, so I just wanted to point out with this activity that opening up to others and even to strangers is not particularly a bad thing. So in fact, Dr. Springer, he does develop and use techniques like this in therapy. So it does, which tells you that therapy isn't at all what it is depicted as in Hollywood movies. You know how you have the person, like the therapist, sitting in a chair, and you have the patient just lying on a chair or a stool, whatever it is, just talking. So therapy is really not all about that. It is about opening up to yourself and kind of exploring what it's all about. So that's kind of the point of that. So building off of that, I do want to move on to time management, because that is a huge, huge part of learning to manage your stress and anxiety. So number one, prioritizing and planning. So using a digital or paper calendar to keep track of deadlines, to keep track of different events is definitely very important. So personally, I use Google Calendar because it allows me to color code everything, and it's easy to see with the little bars and everything. So I do use that. Second thing, allocating your time in blocks. It does avoid distractions. So this is analogous to so you know when you get into a car, you don't just start driving. You think about where you want to go, you plan your route, and then you start driving. So you should be doing the same thing when you sit down to work. You should be setting a goal, and you should be setting an end time to what you want to accomplish. So for example, say I want to finish 30 math problems before eating dinner at 7 p.m. So that's specific, and it kind of sets a goal for me to meet at a certain time, which also does ensure that I can get everything done on my agenda. The next thing, doing your most difficult tasks first. So I know that doing your most difficult tasks is something that is very hard to kind of get yourself to do, but when you do the hardest tasks first, you're fresher and you're more likely to be able to put the effort into it that you need to in order to get it done to the best of your ability. And more specifically, going back to organizing your time, there is something called the Pomodoro technique, and that is basically when you break down your work time into different intervals or blocks of time of 25 minutes each with 5-minute short breaks in between, and then after 4 or 5 different blocks of time, you do have a long 20 to 30-minute break. So that is a very good way of keeping yourself focused, which brings me to the next one.
Excuse me, what does Pomodoro mean?
So it's actually, this technique is actually named after the guy who developed it. So that's, okay, no problem. So the third biggest thing is to maintain your focus. So you know when you have a deadline, you manage to get more work done in 12 hours before the deadline than in 12 days before the deadline. So this is kind of a reflection, well, scientifically, this is a reflection of Parkinson's law, which tells you that work expands to fill the time allotted. So essentially, even though you do have a boost in productivity 12 hours before a deadline, there is a trick to getting more done without waiting to the last day or last minute to do it. And the trick to that is maintaining focus. So first thing first, eliminate distractions. So I know our phones, our electronic devices, are very big distractors. So kind of silencing your notifications, social media, news, whatever it may be, is very helpful. Or if you're like me and you have the tendency to kind of mindlessly pick up your phone and just start scrolling, just putting your phone or electronic device in a different room can also be very helpful. And going right off of that, we do have limited attention spans as humans. Therefore, we can only do a certain amount of time of deep work in kind of one sitting. So I know, especially as a student, even as adults, we do schedule long blocks of time to kind of do our work, like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. or whatever, to kind of maximize our productivity. But in reality, that's not productive at all because of the reason I told you. So to kind of counter this, what you should do is to schedule blocks of time to do work that require you to be sharp, and that all depends on how you are as a person. So if you work better at night, whether you work better in the morning or afternoon, you should kind of schedule your time, your blocks of time based off of that. And then no multitasking. So this sounds kind of counterintuitive, but multitasking in reality is counterproductive. So have you ever tried doing your work and watching a movie at the same time? So for those of you that have, you'll notice that it takes you a lot longer to finish whatever you're working on because you're distracted by the movie, and at the same time, you're not able to fully enjoy the movie because you're distracted by the work that you have to do. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So you should be focusing on one thing at a time. Yes, do you have a question?
And what about instead of the movie, music, soft music in the background? Because when I was in college, when I was young, I used to have music, classical music, behind to concentrate in what I was doing. Movies and music are in the same category, or they are different things?
So the question was about music and whether that can be a distracting thing. And my answer to that is it really depends on who you are as a person, because music, especially classical music, does help some people focus, but to others it is distracting. So it does depend on who you are as a person. Good question. As I was saying before, so you should be focusing on one thing at a time, so you can do it quickly and correctly than if you were distracted. And then free time. So by free time, I mean like the little bits of time, not organized free time, but like the little bits of time that you use, waiting in line, riding in a train, riding in a car even, not driving it, obviously. But this is perfect for routine tasks like reviewing your notes or going through flashcards or kind of organizing your day, organizing your planner, things along those lines. So now we have a little true or false activity. So we're going to project a series of statements, and by a raise of hands, I just want you all to tell me what you think of these statements. So the first one is mental health problems only affect certain age groups. Yes, definitely. It is false. So as we do progress through life, there are different stressors that do affect us. Anywhere from young children, they can show early signs of mental illness. Right through adulthood, they do have their own challenges that come with it that do cause stress. So next statement. Personality weakness or character flaws can cause mental health problems. People with mental health problems can snap out of it if they try hard enough.
False.
That is correct. So that is false. So mental health problems have nothing to do with being weak or lazy. Many factors do contribute to having mental illness, such as biological factors, life experiences, family history, and the works. True or false? I can't do anything for a person with a mental health problem. That is indeed false. So even loved ones and close friends can make a big difference in a person's struggle with mental health. So kind of reaching out to them, learning more about what they're struggling with, and the works, and treating them with respect in general is a great way to help a person struggling with a mental illness. So true or false? Prevention doesn't work. It is impossible to prevent mental illnesses. That is correct. Prevention of mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders does focus on minimizing and addressing risk factors, and doing this does have many beneficial impacts, such as higher productivity and overall improved quality of life. True or false? People are faking it or doing it for attention. Indeed, that is false. So this kind of goes along with, just as no one chooses to have a physical illness, no one really chooses to have a mental illness. So that's along those lines. And then true or false? You don't need therapy, you just take a pill. That is definitely false. So treatment options do vary, and people struggling with mental illnesses, they do have mental health professionals that do help them figure out the best treatment plan for them, and often that does include a combination of therapy and medication. So now I'd like to introduce We have here tonight a clinical psychologist by the name of Dr. Springer. He earned his MA and PhD in clinical psychology from Fairleigh Dickinson University. He has given over 50 professional presentations and workshops, and he has numerous experiences. And he has also written a book and a lot of manuscripts. One in particular is called Game-Based Cognitive Therapy for Child Sexual Abuse, an Innovative Approach. He is also the co-owner of Good Life Center for Mental Health. That's located in Cranford, New Jersey. I'm sure you all got flyers when you all entered. And most importantly, he is my co-presenter and my mentor. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Springer.
I'm going to try not to fall over these wires. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Rihi did a wonderful job of doing the introductory part of this presentation. And what we're going to do now is do a little bit of a shift. Can I just grab the... We're going to start with an activity that I do with some of my clients to help them with stress and anxiety management. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to pass around one of two things to people. If you're willing and you're able to eat chocolate, we're going to pass a Hershey Kiss to you. But don't unwrap it, don't eat it, just hold on to it. And if you don't like chocolate or can't eat chocolate, we have hard candy for you. Okay, so Rihi's going to distribute that, and then we'll get started with the activity.
Is there anyone who can't have chocolate or won't have chocolate?
Okay, that makes it easy because I can focus on the chocolate. And while we're passing this out, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. You know, we go through life, and oftentimes we're on to the next thing, right? We go from one thing to the next thing without even thinking about what we're doing a lot of the time. Let me ask you, everyone, a question here. How many lights did you stop at on your way here when you were driving here? Are you sure? Most people, especially driving longer distances, probably wouldn't know. And that's because we're on autopilot. So much for our lives, we're running from one activity to the next. You know, whether, we're maybe worried about getting there on time or making sure we have enough time in the day to do the things that we need to do. And very infrequently, we're focusing on what we're doing in that very moment. And this activity is really about having you focus on being in this room here right now with me and with what we're doing. You know, I think that we're going to actually do something called mindful eating. And most people, I think, don't have this luxury or opportunity quite often, or don't take advantage of that opportunity. And oftentimes we eat without even thinking about what we're consuming, what we're putting in our body, how much we're putting in our body. And so what we're going to do now is take this time to actually enjoy the process of eating. Okay? So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is to try during this exercise to focus completely and totally on the Hershey Kiss that's in your hand right now. Okay? If your mind drifts, just notice it and bring it back to what's in front of you. So pick up your wrapped candy, or your wrapped chocolate, Hershey Kiss, and hold it in your hand. Place it in your palm, and notice the colors and shapes on the package, and feel the weight of it inside of your hand. Pretend like you've never seen a wrapped chocolate candy before. Examine it in every way you possibly can and look at it as closely as possible, noticing anything and everything about it. Touch the packaging with your fingers and feel the texture. pay attention to the sound the wrapper's making as it's crinkling in your hands. Notice all the colors. Look at the different sides of the chocolate wrapper and notice any place that the light reflects off the package and any shadows that it creates. As I mentioned, if your mind starts to wander during this activity, just bring it back so that you're focused on what's in your hand. Notice the movement of your hand, fingers, and arm muscles as you open the chocolate. So I'm going to ask you to start to just unwrap it and notice your body. Notice your hands. Notice the sound. Notice what it looks like as you slowly unwrap the chocolate. You may hear other people or other noises in the room. Notice the sounds from others, but bring it back to your chocolate in your hand. Now, once it's open, raise the chocolate to your nose and smell it. Slowly breathe in several times and focus on the different smells. Does smelling the chocolate trigger anything else in your body? Think about it. Does it bring back any memories? Does it make you think about anything? Is your mouth watering? Are you having any thoughts like, hurry up and let me eat the chocolate? What's taking so long? If so, notice those thoughts, but bring your attention back to smelling the chocolate. So you're focused on smelling the chocolate and nothing else. Okay, now's the time that everybody's been waiting for. Now slowly take a small bite of the chocolate, but do not chew or swallow it. Notice the feeling and taste of the chocolate in your mouth. How does it feel as it melts? Notice the taste and sensations of the chocolate on your tongue. Move the chocolate around in your mouth. Try to notice the movement where you feel like you want to swallow. And now slowly swallow the chocolate, focusing on the sensations that are going down your throat. Notice any lingering tastes or sensations in your mouth. So now I'm going to bring you everyone back to the room. If you want to continue eating it, it's fine. And I want to ask you, how is this different from what you normally do when you eat chocolate or anything else? This is what everybody does in their homes, or when they're at lunch, or anywhere else. So how is this different? Anything. What was that?
Enjoying the more.
You enjoyed it more?
Yeah.
Okay. You enjoyed it more?
Really taking my time to savor it.
So you're really taking your time to savor it. Okay.
Like
Anything else?
swallow it. Because
To
sometimes
swallow
you
it.
put one and it just goes straight to the stomach.
All right. Uh-huh.
Yeah, for me, it was just too slow.
For you, it was too slow. Tell me about that. What was happening for you? What were you telling yourself, or what were you saying about being too slow in your mind?
Just trying to stay in the moment.
Stay in the moment.
But
Yeah.
my body was saying, I'm ready to eat this chocolate.
Right. So your body's like, oh, let's get on with this, right?
Let's get on with it.
And I think that you're not different from everyone else, because that's how we're used to living life, right? We're not used to eating chocolate like that or anything else for that matter, that way. And that speaks to what we do and how we do it. We're always going somewhere else. We're always focused on the next thing rather than what we're doing right now. And if you ate like that, what do you think would happen?
I'm going to start my meals doing this for 5
Yes.
minutes.
Okay. Start your meal.
And then I'll do my regular eating, but
Okay, you're gonna start your meals doing this.
it
Well,
was such a relaxing activity
so you found it to be relaxing.
and delicious, right? at the
Oh,
same time,
delicious.
because, right, I tasted everything.
Did it taste different this time for anybody?
Creamier.
Creamier? Okay. For some people it did, some people it didn't. Well, what research shows is that if we eat slowly, we're going to end up eating less. We're going to enjoy our food probably a little bit more. We're not going to need as much to be fulfilled. But we're also doing it without having all these other things distracting us from what's in front of us. And this is an example of what can be applied to a whole range of experiences in your life. This is just one. And why eating is such an important one to use as an illustration is because it's very tangible. It's not theoretical, it's not abstract, it's very concrete right in front of you. And most people are able to bring their attention back to that. It's much harder to do that with some other things in your life, such as like if you were at work, focusing on just your work might be really difficult because you would have competing things that you'd be thinking about potentially simultaneously.
I was saying that, for example, since not being from here, I always eat like this. But I notice when I go out to eat, they always pressure you to eat fast and get out.
Right, right.
So, I like, for example, to go to certain places where I say, sorry, I like to enjoy my food.
Okay.
So people look at you like, oh, you're going to stay here forever.
So you're saying you practice this regularly, you're not from here.
It's not that I practice, it's just the way I
It's
eat.
what you do, right?
Yeah.
And, and you mentioned that when you go to restaurants, they are working on rushing you, right? Bringing out the next course, getting the table to turn over so they can make more money, right? This whole idea of time is money, right? And we have to be as productive as possible and do as much as possible. And I don't know how many of you felt, well, I would be wasting time if I ate like this, right? But the truth is that what you would be doing is allowing yourself to experience the world. And oftentimes we miss that. We miss some of the experiences that we could be getting because we're eating to live, not really eating to enjoy the food, which some other places in the world really value that. That's a major part of their life. So does anybody have an idea of how they might apply this to other areas of their life?
When we are talking with each other, most of the time we are not listening and our mind is wandering for the next activity or the next rest of the day or whatever we planned.
Sure, so when you're talking to other people, you might be thinking about a million other things and not really even focusing on what the person's even saying. How many times have you had a conversation with someone, you're focusing on something else? I'll tell you a funny thing. My wife is probably going to kill me for saying this, but I know when she's really not listening because she says, and she's at work doing her work and talking to me at the same time, but I know, she probably can repeat back what I said because she has a good memory, but she's not really taking it in, right? And I can imagine from people laughing here, that happens, right? We do that, we go through life, and we have so many competing things going on that even the social interaction, how many times do you go to restaurants nowadays and see someone at the table texting or emailing or looking at their phones when they're theoretically having a conversation with someone else? Or maybe we think they should be having a conversation with someone else, right? So we're such a technology-driven society, and we're so focused on what we need to get done that we end up missing out on what we're doing right now. And that creates a ton of anxiety, right? When you don't hear something that you needed to hear, and now you have to think back to that, what did that person say? That might cause anxiety, right? It also may cause anxiety that you're having to focus on something in the future when, in fact, you're trying to also take into consideration what you're trying to do right now and get this done. And as Riki was mentioning, watching TV and doing work you might not do a great job at the work and then have to redo it, or it may take a really long time to get the work done. But the TV is just an example of entertainment. There's tons of things that we're doing that theoretically are productive simultaneously, but we're not really effective at any one thing. So how can we tell the difference, right, between anxiety is a normal experience that people have, a normal emotion that people have, right? Stress, anxiety. We have difficulties in a whole wide range of ways, or we have just a way of kind of dealing with different events and things in our life, right? How do we know when it's a problem and we may need help, and how do we know when it's just normal or just the up and down of everyday life? How do we know when stress is too much stress, or sadness is too much sadness to handle on your own? Anybody have some ideas? Well, some of the things are up here, where we might want to start considering getting some help. And so if it's persistent, frequent, debilitating in some way, if it's affecting your sleep, your eating, your focus, and this is across the board, or in multiple areas, and it's affecting you and your relationships with others or your productivity, it's probably a time to start getting some help. If you notice changes in your eating, either decrease or increase in that, or a loss of interest in the pleasurable activities. All you're doing is working all the time. You're not doing anything for yourself or anything pleasurable, and you don't find anything really enjoyable anymore, it's probably a good time to think about whether you might need professional help. There's some signs.
What is a somatic complaint? I don't know what.
A somatic complaint is having body aches and pains that are not explained by medical causes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it's definitively necessary to seek professional help if you have any of these. Thoughts of hurting yourself, hurting someone else. You believe that your safety is at risk, right? And if it's something imminent, something that you think you're going to hurt yourself or someone else immediately, or you feel like you might do that, it's really important to get immediate help. But if you're starting to think about those thoughts or contemplating, or you hear of someone else that is, it's really important to not just say, oh, they're just joking around, or they're not really serious, or they're not going to do it, or I'm not going to do it even though I'm contemplating it. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of people because of that. One of the things that really really affected me recently was, I don't know if you all heard about Rowan University in the news. Rowan had 3 deaths by suicide last semester. And it was these are college students, their parents are sending them to college to get an education. And this is not limited to Rowan. It's really an issue across the board. And it's not limited to adolescents or young adults in college. It's really important that we take these things seriously. If we're starting to notice changes in ourselves or in others, it's really important to reach out and seek help. And there's a whole range of people that you can go to. If it's kids, they can go to teachers, school counselors, others, social workers in their school. You can always talk to a physician. They have resources. So your medical physician, if you think you have a medical problem, but they find out it's not, it seems to be psychological and not medical, they can help you find someone. There's mental health professionals, a whole range of mental health professionals that I'll go through. There's a free suicide, 24-hour suicide hotline, or 2 of them actually. There's a peer support hotline, and then a national suicide hotline that's always answered. And then, of course, there's 911 in the local emergency room that will help anybody. So I can't stress that enough. So what does seeking help say about a person?
More enlightened than most people.
More enlightened than most people. Does anybody think they're weak or they're a coward for seeking help? I can tell you that stereotypes have been that way. it's been shameful. It could be shameful for themselves or for their family in the past. I think there's become more awareness, but it's still not something, people are much more, they feel much more comfortable going to a medical professional for a checkup than they do to a mental health professional for help. But both are vitally important. You know, we have our physical well-being and our psychological well-being, and research more and more says that the two are tied really closely together. Psychological help can actually help with pain management and can actually help reduce people who are suffering from severe medical illnesses feel better. So it's so important that these topics are not taboo. So I just want to get into very briefly what therapy is and how does it work and how it works. But before we're going to talk about the specifics, I want to do one more stress and anxiety activity that I do with some of my clients. For this activity, you actually don't need anything but yourselves, okay? And it's something called progressive muscle relaxation. Has anyone heard of that before? Some people are nodding yes. Okay. The whole idea of this is that we carry tension at various places in our body, okay? And what we want to do is we want to exercise those places, recognize that tension, and release that tension in the various parts of our body. And what we're going to do for this is we're going to do an activity that's going to help release some of that tension. Okay? So I want everybody to sit back in their chairs, get comfortable. If you're comfortable doing this, close your eyes, shut your eyes for a minute. And begin by taking a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and breathe slowly out through your mouth. Okay, now we're going to do that again. Breathe in through your nose, hold it for 5 seconds, and notice the air filling up your lungs. Hold your breath, and slowly breathe out. And as you breathe out, try it one more time. In through your nose, hold it, and breathe out. And as you're breathing out, slowly let the tension leave your body. Okay, take a deep breath one more time, hold it, and let the stress out of your body. Now move your attention to your feet. Begin by tensing up your feet, by curling your toes and arching your foot. Hold on to that tension and notice what it feels like. Now release the tension in your foot. Notice the feeling of relaxation. Next, begin to focus on your lower leg. Tense the muscles in your calves and hold them tightly, and pay attention to the feeling of tension in those calf muscles. And release the tension in your calves. Again, notice the feeling of relaxation. And remember to keep taking deep breaths in through your nose, hold it, and out through your mouth. Next, tense the muscles of your upper leg and pelvis. You could do this by tightly squeezing your thighs together. Make sure you feel tenseness without going to the point of strain. And release. Feel the tension and leave your muscles. Take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it, and out through your mouth. Begin to tense your stomach muscles and chest. You could do this by sucking your stomach in, squeeze harder, and hold the tension. A little bit longer. Now release the tension and allow your body to go limp. Let yourself notice the feeling of relaxation. Continue taking deep breaths in through your nose, hold it, and out through your mouth. Remember, release the air slowly and feel it leaving your lungs. Next, tense the muscles in your back by bringing your shoulders together behind you. Hold them tightly, tense them as hard as you can without straining, and keep holding. And release the tension from your back. Feel the tension slowly leaving your body and the new feeling of relaxation. Notice how different your body feels when you allow it to relax. Tense your arms all the way from your hands to your shoulders. Make a fist and squeeze all the way up your arm and hold it. And release the tension from your arms and shoulders. Notice the feeling of relaxation in your fingers, hands, arms, and shoulders. And notice how your arms feel limp and at ease. Move up your neck and your head. Tense your face and your neck by distorting the muscles around your eyes and mouth. Now release the tension. Again, notice the new feeling of relaxation. Finally, tense your entire body. Tense your feet, your legs, your stomach, your chest, your arms, your head, and your neck. And tense harder without straining them. And hold the tension. Hold all of that tension throughout your body and keep holding it. Now release and allow your whole body to go limp. Pay attention to the feeling of relaxation and how different it is from the feeling of tension. Begin to wake up by moving your muscles around. Adjust your arms and legs and stretch your muscles and open your eyes. Anybody want to tell everyone else how they're feeling or what that experience was like?
Calmness.
Calmness. Anyone else? So this is often helpful for people that tend to feel very stressed and anxious. And what I do when I work with people on this technique is that I have them practice it. Because just like the mindfulness activity, which I didn't really talk much about in terms of practice, but this requires lots of practice because you can get so good at it that you don't have to go through this whole activity to feel the sense of relaxation that you might be feeling right now. Once you train your body to feel relaxed and to distinguish between feeling tense and relaxed, you can actually let your body know when you want to feel relaxed and allow the tension to leave your body pretty instantaneously. The nice thing about this activity is that it can be done anywhere. You don't need a Hershey Kiss, you don't need anything else, all you need is you. Any thoughts about this? Do you think this could be helpful to anybody? Okay. So there's a couple of myths about therapy that I want to debunk. The first is it takes many years to work. I mean, we see this on TV. We see, as Ricky was mentioning, a therapist sitting in their chair listening to a patient who just talked endlessly about everything that's happened in their life, starting with their childhood. And they could be in therapy for 10 years, possibly even 3 or 4 days a week. And that model is called psychoanalysis. It's still used to some degree, but not by very many people these days. But that is not what the research shows to be most effective. And the second part is consistent with what I just said, which is you sit or lie down and just talk. Research shows that treatment can be very effective over a short period of time. 50% of clients improve in 8 sessions. So pretty much 8 weeks, and they can improve to the level that they want to. For the vast majority, by 6 months, they improve, 75% improve by that point. And so it doesn't take a whole lot of time for you to have significant benefits from therapy. The other characteristics are important, I think, because they do vary quite a bit from what the common beliefs about therapy are. One is that there's lots of research right now that show what therapies are effective for what, and there are specific techniques that are research-based for different problems and difficulties that people have. The other piece is that it's experiential. So at least my philosophy is that just talking is not going to make you better. It might help, might feel better for a little while, but it's not going to, if you're having a real difficulty, you need more than just talking. And that's where the multiple methods come in. I don't believe, and most people that I work with don't believe that one model or one method fits everyone and helps everyone. And what I do is actually I use 50 plus methods to help people. And what we do is we actually go through the methods one by one and see if that's helpful. And if it's not, we go on to the next one and we move through the methods as fast as possible to find the method that works for a particular individual. Different methods will work for different people. And the other piece the research shows is that it's really important. I meet with clients, usually I start by meeting with them for 90 minutes for the first session, and then I meet with them for 45 minutes typically per week. 45 minutes a week is not going to be very effective unless it's used at home and in their life. And so practicing these techniques, they're very concrete techniques that I use and a number of other psychologists use. You can go out and use them in your actual life, and that's what makes it very effective. If it's used on a daily basis, even if it's 10 minutes a day, just using it outside of the therapeutic sessions is going to be important for it to be helpful. And it's going to also decrease the amount of time in treatment that you would need. So we're at a point where Reed is going to come back up, and we're going to have a question and answer session, and then we're going to also be raffling off a gift card. So
if at this point any of you have any questions about things that we may not have addressed, feel free to ask them now.
So I have a question. So, like, in going through the therapy, sometimes, like, maybe your dynamics with me doesn't just match. So how do you handle the situation where, this currently is not working, and you have to, like, ship off the patient to another
So I believe therapeutic match is really important. And I always see the first few sessions as an opportunity to get to know each other and to see if the client and I are a good match. It could be later on in the process that you discover that, but most times within the first few sessions, the therapist and the client, are able to determine, the therapist is able to determine whether they can help you with the problems you want help with, right? And the client's able to determine whether or not they feel comfortable and they feel like it's helpful. They might at some point determine that the strategies you're using are not that helpful. What I do is every session, I ask clients to actually fill out a rating form about that session and about me. So I get feedback every single session. So patients evaluate how connected they felt, how helpful they felt the session was. They also have a place on the form for them to indicate the thing they liked best and least about the session. So we have a dialogue, we can talk about it. If a client feels that this is not a good fit, I will help them transition to someone else who's a better fit for them. And I have lots of resources that I know lots of psychologists and other mental health professionals throughout the state, and I'll help them transition. And if they don't want my help and they want to go to someone else, that's fine too. And what I'll do is I'll just help them so that they can have the information that they need to move forward. And I'm always happy with a release to provide the information that I gathered about the client to the next person that they want to see.
What's the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist?
Okay. So a psychologist is trained to do mental health treatment for therapy, evaluations and the like. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor who goes to medical school, and some do therapy but get trained after graduating from medical school to do that additional training. But the majority of psychiatrists actually provide medication. Their primary focus isn't on therapy, it's on medication. I do work with a number of psychiatrists, and I tend to, in many cases, favor functional medicine psychiatrists who look at nutrition in addition to psychotropic medication, because looking at it holistically is really helpful. Sometimes I just work with a nutritionist as well, because nutrition can actually impact anxiety, depression, and the like as well. And so a combination of approaches is oftentimes most helpful. Some patients that work with me do take psychotropic medication. Many do not, and are able to get better. What the research shows now is that therapy can actually change your biology and change what's going on physiologically in your brain as well. So both medication and therapy can do that.
You mentioned foods. Are there certain foods that help with anxiety?
There are. That's not my area of expertise. That's nutritionist. And some nutritionists actually work with mental health disorders, and they would be able to tailor that specifically to you. What nutritionists can do is, depending on the nutritionist, I actually know someone that's very, very good, and he does blood testing and looks at your vitamins and minerals and such, nutrition in your blood, and then can make recommendations specifically for you if you're low on one thing or high on another. There could be supplements or foods that can do that. But yes, the research is really showing that nutrition has an impact, a significant impact on your mental health and well-being. But I often work in tandem with the nutritionist, because nutritionists can do one piece of it, but once you start having anxiety, even if biologically your body's not telling you you're anxious, you kind of develop these patterns that create that anxiety. So changing both will really maximally help you. Any other questions about anything we discussed, or anything that even if we didn't discuss is fine.
I mean, you mentioned that you don't accept insurance, and I know why. But I think it's important that you tell us how much do these services cost, and then are there any lower cost options?
So my information, my rates and everything are on my website, all the information about the practice and that kind of thing. you know, for my practice itself, I could tell you, I work there and I have a social worker also that works there. Her rates are a little bit lower than mine. And there are psychologists and social workers and others that are in network, and I happen to be out of network. That doesn't mean that insurance won't cover my services. A lot of people that do come to me actually have insurance, and they have out-of-network benefits and submit the bills for reimbursement. And that can range based on the type of insurance plan that they
Yeah,
have.
I mean, the deductibles right now are so high that it doesn't matter anymore.
Right, for some people, that's the case,
And
unfortunately.
it goes higher and higher every
Right.
year.
Yeah. You know, and the idea is that there are some great services out there that are low cost. One hidden gem, I'm going to tell you, is Kane University. Kane has has doctoral students who are training, are advanced doctoral students in training to be psychologists. They have a very low-cost clinic, and they don't take insurance, but they go so low and they're based on your income. So that's always an accessible place. Trinitas Hospital also provides services, and they take many insurance plans directly. So there are places that are in network or are very low cost. And you know, the fees that my partner and I charge are consistent with the reasonable and customary fees in the area, but they're not low cost.
In one of the slides, you mentioned about the different things that will tell you you are anxious or you are not able to focus, and there were different points. But how do we find out that we can manage things on our own to relaxing or implementing different techniques, and at what point we should go and seek professional help? How do we identify that?
You know, I think that the best way to judge it is it's always a personal decision, right? And it's really about how much is it impacting your life right now, and what, have you tried different things and have they been successful, right? If you've read some books and done some self-help stuff and it really hasn't helped you, and you feel like it's impacting your ability to work or your ability to have a meaningful relationship with other people, whether it be your romantic partner or friends, those types of things, or you're spending a lot of time worrying and it's really affecting your life in a negative way, that's probably a good indication that you'd want to seek some professional help. As you saw in terms of literature, it doesn't mean you have to be in treatment forever. It may be very temporary, and what I always do is I work with my clients, and there's a difference between feeling better and getting better. And feeling better is just not feeling the negative symptoms that you don't want to feel anymore, right? You feel happier, you feel good. But what ends up happening is you go through life and there's different stressors in your life, and you will experience anxiety or depression again in the future. So what I do is I help prepare my clients for when that happens. It's called relapse prevention. It takes about a session or two at the end of treatment, and what I do is I help them prepare for that so that they know that's going to happen and know what to do in that situation. So the hope that I have is that I can help someone get better, and they don't need to come back to me when the next time they have a problem. That they have the skills now to be able to deal with that problem effectively. If they do come back to me, it's usually for a session or two. It's usually not a full-blown treatment again, unless it's for a completely different issue.
So, can you refer a person to a nutritionist?
Yes. I have some really great nutritionists. One nutritional psychiatrist that I highly recommend, and another nutritionist that I think is wonderful, and they both work with mental health issues as well as any other medical. The nutritionist works with a whole range of medical issues as well. That's very effective.
For example, when you say nutritionist and mental health, I have the problem about that. I'm a person who usually eats like emotional eating, so I suffer from my weight go ups and down because sometimes I just eat because I just want to feel like emptiness. So in that case, I need a nutritionist and a mental health provider, both, I guess both, to work together?
It depends, it's, you could start with one and then discuss with them what kind of plan would make the most sense. So it just depends on what you're looking for help with. And then, not everybody that I work with goes to a nutritionist, but a number of people do. Similarly, the nutritionist that I work with doesn't send everyone to a mental health professional. It just depends on what difficulties they're having and whether both make sense, or one makes sense to start with, or one can solve the difficulties that you're having. So it's not cookie cutter, it's very specific. All the things that I do are very specific to the individual. There's no rule across the board that I would say you have to do this or do that. It's more based on your own needs.
And so in order to know my own needs, I have to see, I guess, first the professional to help me to decide what is better. I mean, what should I do first?
It depends on you and what you would want to focus on first. Do you want to focus on your nutrition? Do you want to focus on your mental health? And then, based on who you go to, they can recommend the other if they think that it would be helpful to you too.
Okay.
So I don't think there's a right or wrong necessarily. It's your preference. Anybody else? Any questions for Reed?
All right, do you want to move on to the raffle? All right. So everyone has a raffle ticket, right? Or whether you, at least one. So if everyone can get their tickets out. Okay. Okay. The number is 8383438. Oh, this is the Dunkin' Donuts gift card, by the way.
Wait, what is it?
8383438.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome! Congratulations. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you all so much for coming tonight. But I also wanted to connect everything back to my personal experiences that I was talking about in the beginning. So I mentioned Mary and how she didn't know how to get help when she was struggling with what she was going through. So I encourage you all to not be oblivious to your surroundings and kind of pay attention to changes in your own behavior and the behaviors of others. I encourage you to take action, because those who are suffering, they often don't have the means to help themselves, and that is where I ask all of you to come in. So even if you can't help them directly, there is someone out there who can.